All right, this one is a simple one, and it is the first fly that I do in my beginning fly tying class. And this is a Brassie, and for some reason I had most of the flies that we do in the beginning class up here with videos, and it has occurred to me that I don't have the video for the Brassie, so I'm going to do one for you. And this is, like I say, the first fly that we do in the beginning fly tying class, and the reason for it is it teaches a lot of stuff. Simple little fly, but it's going to teach us a lot of stuff. And what I use it for in the class is to sort of teach how to start the thread, how to make a thread base, how to keep it smooth, how to tie in a stiff material. In this case, it's going to be wire. And how to make tight concentric turns with that wire to keep those wraps butted together. We're also going to cover a little bit of dubbing. So if you're a beginning tyer, this is a good place to start. And if you consult along with my Charlie Craven's Basic Fly Tying book, the order of flies where you should start and sort of build from would be a Brassie and then a Black Beauty. That's what we do the first week. Then we do an RS2 and a hare's ear, sort of building on those techniques, and then move on to a pheasant tail and a beadhead prince, then an elk hair caddis and a stimulator. Then we do a parachute blue-winged olive and a regular standard Adams. And then the last week we do either a royal wolf or a humpy. And in that course of lessons, you build techniques that by the time you get to that humpy at the end, it's actually a pretty simple fly because you've already done all the techniques. There's no new techniques on that fly. You've done them all on other flies and just sort of collected those skills along the way. So pretty crafty way to go about it. If I do say so myself, it's taken, I don't know, about 40 years of teaching class to come up with a good lesson plan to teach fly tying, but that's what has worked very well for me. So with that, I'm going to tie you this Brassie. So I'm going to start on a Tiemco 100 SPBL. This is a little bit stouter than usual dry fly hook, and it's barbless. And I'm going to take some 14-aught Veevus in black, and I'm going to start this thread. I want to start it about an eye length behind the hook eye. And the easiest way to do that, and I'm going to give these directions just like I would in beginning fly tying class. So what I'm going to do to start this thread is I'm just going to take a single turn around, and then I can seesaw these two ends up to one eye length back from the hook eye, and then create my jam knot by wrapping back over this tag. And then I can come in and trim that out. So I've just got a short little jam knot there behind the eye. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make tight concentric touching turns, not necessarily overlapping, but just tight concentric turns all the way back to the bend. Now when you get back here toward the hook point, you'll start to run in to the hook point there. And the way to get around that is I'm going to change the angle of the thread. You can see I've just changed the pitch as I come around there so that I can get back inside the bend, and I want to be to the very last straight portion of the shank. From that point, I'm going to come forward again with tight concentric turns. And I want to try to keep this thread as flat and smooth as I can as I wrap. Right back up to where I started. Now I'm going to take a piece of Brassie-sized copper wire. So Brassie, if I get that right up there where you can see it, Brassie is a size. The sizes go small, extra small. They start with extra small. Small, Brassie, medium, and large. So there's 5 sizes, and Brassie is the middle size. The reason that is when they first came out with this wire, it only came in one size, and it was called Brassie. Then they decided to make it in other sizes, and they kind of filled those in around the edges. So what I'm going to do, I should show you that too, on this brand new shiny spool of copper wire, the end is tucked under that little tab, that little purple tab. So I'm going to free that end, and what I'll do is I'll uncoil a couple of turns. It only takes maybe 4 or 5 inches to tie this fly, but then I'm going to tuck the end back in that notch, and I'm going to pull on it and break off that piece of wire. So I didn't cut that with my scissors. You don't want to cut wire with your scissors. Don't get in the habit of that. So now I'm going to take this piece of wire, and if we look close here, and I know I actually have a red shirt on, but It's looking pretty dark because my depth of field is dropped off at the end there. But between the thread and the hook, we've got a right angle. And I'm going to take this piece of wire from my near side. I'm going to hold it close to the end. And I'm going to come from my near side and just bring it up underneath the hook. So I'm coming up the thread, right up to the hook. And you can see you're looking at the end of that piece of wire. So I'm from the front edge, from the hook eye side, bring it against the thread and bring it straight up to the hook. So we've got an XYZ axis. And if I turn this, this is the angle that you're looking at. Your thread would be hanging down here. Okay, so this piece of wire is just from the front side. I'm going to set that piece of wire in, and I'm going to take 2 or 3 turns forming a band. So those are 2 or 3 turns that are laying next to each other, not stacked up vertically, but next to each other horizontally. Now I've got that wire crossed underneath the hook. What I want to do is I want to take this tag end and roll it around to my near side. Now at this point, I might put another turn or 2 over it, so for a total of 5 right there, just narrow little band. I'm going to draw this wire down to length, and I'll try to do this where you can see this. I'm going to pull this down to length, and I hold tension on my thread to kind of help control that. And I want to pull that piece of wire down, ideally under 1 turn of thread, where I don't have a little stub hanging out. I think I did a pretty good job right there. But if you have a little tiny stub sticking out, you're okay. So now I'm going to wrap back over this piece of wire, and I want to hold it in line along the near side of the hook shank. And you can see I'm flexing the hook as I make these wraps. And these are tight concentric turns all the way back to the bend. I want to be particularly careful to make very tight tension on the thread as I come back to the bend of the hook. And then I'm going to come forward again with tight concentric turns. The reason I want that tension very tight right there is this wire is fairly thick and fairly stiff. And if you don't have it tied down tightly, you'll end up with a lump in the finished fly. This piece of wire that is so neatly lined up along the near side of the hook right here, you can actually see the glare on it right there, will start to lift underneath that thread if you don't have it anchored down tightly. That's another argument for polyester thread, which is what Veevus is made out of. A-dot unithread is a perfectly suitable substitute here, and it is polyester as well. So polyester has much less stretch than nylon. 70 denier UTC would not be a great choice for this fly because that stretch will allow this piece of wire to crawl underneath those thread wraps, which we don't want. So I've wrapped over that wire all the way back down to the bend and then back up to my index point. So my thread's just hanging just about an eye length behind the hook eye there. And I'm going to begin to wrap this wire back here at the bend. So I'm going to come straight up and straight down. Now I'm going to run into the hook point. What I want to do is I want to bring the wire around the hook point, and then here's the key, back again. And I'm going to put the next wrap right in front of that turn. Then I'll come around the hook point and back again. And I'm tying left-handed. I am right-handed, so my dominant hand is what's holding the wire right now. My dominant hand from the back of the vise. So you can see I'm supporting my hand on the vise, and as I wrap, I am angling the wire back about probably not quite a 45-degree angle, but at an angle so that the previous wrap acts as a guide for the next wrap. And I'll just feed this wire around. I'm handing it off to my thread hand on the bottom of the hook, and just angling those wraps back. That one went a little too far. See how that caught? So that I can butt these wire wraps nice and tight together and wrap all the way up to just short of my index point. Okay. When I get there, I'm going to unwind a turn or 2 of thread, change hands with the wire. So now I'm holding it in my thread hand, and I'm going to take the thread behind the wire 2 or 3 times. Now, I see a lot of people on the internet put a couple extra turns in front. Those extra turns in front of your tie-off do nothing. Don't do that. That doesn't make any sense. Use logic and reason there. The 2 wraps in front don't go over anything. The wraps, the 2 or 3 wraps that we put behind the material are what is tying the material off. So 2 or 3 there, nice good tight wraps. Then I'm going to hold taut on the thread, and I'll take the stub end and helicopter it around. Just twist it in a circle, and it'll break right off. You can see there's just a tiny little stub that sticks out there, much cleaner than trying to trim that off with scissors. It doesn't hurt our scissors when we don't cut that wire, so we want to avoid cutting wire with our scissors anyway, but we also have a much cleaner break off right there. So now I'm going to take a little pinch of black Superfine dubbing. And it's not going to take much, just a tiny little bit. I know you can barely see that, and that's the whole idea. This is actually too much dubbing. But I'm going to draw out a bit of thread, and I'm going to twist this dubbing onto the thread, go in one direction. I like to put a little dubbing wax on my fingertips. So I have a thin strand of dubbing applied to the thread there. Get this where you can see it here. There we go. So pretty thin, not much thicker than the thread. I'm going to use the bare thread between the dubbing and the hook to work up to the front edge, or I'm sorry, back edge of my index point. And then I'm going to start to build a ball. And I'm going to overlap the very front turn of wire. And then I'll just sort of work this dubbing back and forth. I want to stretch that out just a bit more, forming a ball. And when I run out of dubbing, you can see I've got about a turn of dubbing left. I'm going to angle toward the hook eye so that I end up with bare thread right behind the hook eye, and just 2 or 3 turns of thread there to make a little thread head. At that point, I'll whip finish. So I'm going to come in and do 3 or 4 turn whip finish. Always tighten your thread in line with the hook shank. Don't pull down, don't pull up. Just pull straight back in line with the hook shank. And then to trim the thread, I'm just going to open my scissors and put the cutting edge of the blade against the thread. So that'll leave me with no tag end that's sticking out. You can see how tightly spaced those wire wraps are. There's no space between them all the way around. That head is about half again the diameter of the body. That's what we're shooting for on a Brassie. One cool thing that this fly teaches you is if you get good at making these wire wraps where they're tight and concentric like that, when you get to dry flies and you're making a dry fly hackle collar, that is the exact same move, sort of angled back. If you think of the stem of a dry fly feather lining up like these wraps of wire on this Brassie, that's exactly what we want. And truth be told, you probably can't wrap a dry fly hackle as neatly as that wire just because it's got some stuff sticking out of it. But the technique is the same, and that's going to give you a nice dense dry fly collar as well. So there's the Brassie. That's the first fly you should learn. People have other opinions about that, but they're wrong. Brassie's the one you start with. You can work up to a woolly booger, but that's a good one to start with. And pay attention to each little technique. Practice, practice, practice. I say that over and over in class, and I really try to hammer it home. I get to be almost a jerk about it. Practice makes a huge difference. Tie 100 of these. Tie them in different colors. Tie them in different sizes. But get those techniques down. And then move on to the next fly. And that's how you get to be a good tyer, is by practice, not by tying 63 versions of something that you tie poorly over and over again. So there's my little bit for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's the Brassie. This is a South Platte midge pattern, South Platte River midge pattern. And this was kind of the original, hopper copper dropper style fly. The original one tied by Gene Lynch was just wire with a piece of heat shrink tubing here at the head. And the idea was to have a heavier fly that he could fish in front of a smaller, skinnier fly behind it, just to act as a weight. Well, lo and behold, the fish started eating this thing, which doesn't surprise me a bit. And I have fished this fly a lot. This is a fly I fished a lot back in the day when I guided. And as plain and sort of old school as it looks, that sucker catches fish. It does. No two ways about it. So you should twist some of those up and have them in your box. Tie them in red, chartreuse, black, copper, olive, brown, all your standard midge colors. That's a good fly to have around. You'll catch fish on that. Of course, you can add a bead. You can put a tungsten bead or a glass bead on there. All sorts of variations. Some guys will put a little short antron wing here just behind the dubbing. But lots of variations on the theme. But knock yourself out. The point being is get that practice in so that you become a good tyer and we can all be proud of you. I'm already proud of you because you're in the right place. Thanks for watching. I'm Charlie Craven. Take care.